So this is the idea. I brought some ideas and questions to work with you. I'd like to, if possible, leave plenty of time to comments, questions, and exchange. I'm going through a topic that is not easy, and I would hate that jargon becomes a wall between us. So I'm going to try to explain every term to the minimum detail, and I would ask you please to interrupt me if there is something that is not clear. In doing so, I will have a small time to talk about Lacan, and then from there we will talk about the other subjects. So,
Marcelo, I started recording you with this camera, so if that one doesn't work, we got you. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
I got two.
You got two. Yeah.
Great. So, music, sex, and the sublime. When I talk to you about music, I am not referring to the academic term, but to a discipline that is deeply rooted in human culture. Something like Claude Lévi-Strauss defined as the supreme mystery of the science of man, a mystery that all the various disciplines come up against and which holds the key to their progress. When I talk about sex, rather than the common conception, I will be talking as forces that define our subjectivity, and our subjectivity not in a broad sense, but closely related to the notion of the subject in Lacanian clinic. With Lacan, we have the sexuality as the core of human life. It is rather a mode of existence of the sexuality in the human, beyond its purely biological dimension. Human sexual life is not to language. Sexuality is not a relationship with the other sex, but on the contrary, compared to the animal, there is a central lack in human sexuality. Finally, when we talk about the sublime, instead of talking about the philosophical conception, I would slide the signifier chain, and we will talk about sublimation, which is the way that the sublime is investigating Lacanian theory. The subject of Lacan is the subject of the unconscious, rather than being an imaginary place in which we have the concept that it contains wild drive that have to be domesticated by the ego. It is the side where traumatic truth speaks out. It's not a deep existential truth, but an unbearable truth that we have to learn to live with. Do you hear me okay? I hear a return on me. So. Lacan differs greatly from other psychoanalytic schools. Psychoanalysis is, with him, is not just a technique, but a clinic that confronts the subject with the most radical dimension of human existence. Mental illnesses or structures such as neurosis, psychosis, perversions have the dignity of fundamental philosophical attitudes towards reality. When somebody suffers from obsessional neurosis, this condition draws or entails an entire conception of reality, defining the global structure of the personality. Is any term that is not clear or anything is coming along? When we talk about the subject in Lacan, you will see this type of writing. If the subject can be represented as the subject of the unconscious, you will see like an S bar. Because there is a part of us that we don't know about it. And that ignorance, in the history of philosophy, you go to Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, and you will find that as the Dionysian side. It will be the part that is veiled from the Apollonian ego that believes is in control. In Lacan terms, subject is a divide. Lacan is famous for his statement that our unconscious is structured like a language. He took that from initially the Saussure linguistics. For Saussure, for example, a sign is not necessarily something that connects a word or a name to a thing, but in fact is something which connects a sound to a concept. So with Saussure, we have a signifier over the signifier. Signifier would be the sound, phonetic sound. Signifier would be the concept. Lacan clinic inverts that. In Lacan, we will see that the signifier takes place up and the signifier is down. Lacan definition is that the signifier is what represents a subject to another signifier. Or you can change, I repeat, a signifier is what represents a subject to another signifier. You can change that formula and say the subject is what represents a signifier to another signifier, which means the meaning is lost. The meaning is repressed. The signifier is never reached. So slide from signifier to signifier. Lacan developed his teachings in 3 human registers. The imaginary, which I refer you to the basis for that. This is the mirror stage that you can search on that and how we constitute our identity, which is alienated because we constitute that coming from the other. And that goes in our lives, repeating itself many times, defining what we call our identity, which is an illusion. The symbolic register is usually associated with a structure. It's not the same as language, because language would be the structure that involves the imaginary, the symbolic, which is the law and structures, and also the last one, which is the real. The real, if we can differentiate words in the symbolic world, the real is undifferentiated. The real is the impossible. The resistance to symbolization is why the real is essentially traumatic. So we have 3 registers in which we define our clinic, and also for Lacan, human existence. So far, okay? Please, we can ask me. It's a good moment because I'm going to go around things and to have definitions. So we have subject, we have the registers, we have the idea that it's a device subject. Now let's go to the topic. I play music for you. So music will be implied. Sex is already implied because sex is part of the human condition of access to language. So, to discuss the sublime, I thought to ask 2 questions. Why music affects us so profoundly? Why music like Bach, Prelude, to name an example, you can have your music, engage us so emotionally that all of a sudden, while listening or performing, we might think, what is happening to me? Why I have the sensation of going to another world? And the second question, to go along with coordinates, is what is the enjoyment of music? Could music making be the equivalent of sexual pleasure? Tricky one. Two questions. The first one, I claim that the musical subject, which I named the musicant subject, experience, among other things, a process of sublimation. Sublime change into sublimation. Few concepts of psychoanalysis have had such relevance in the arts as the concept of sublimation. Sublimation comes from the Latin limitari and limits. It means domain, definition of boundaries, can refer to the boundaries of the body. Limis means detour. From there, the word comes sublimis. Sublime and sublimation share the same root. It's almost a contradiction. Something that comes from the boundaries of the body and is associated to something that becomes elevated. Sublimation takes us to the skies, but apparently it's on the boundaries of the body. What is the pleasure of music? Jack Miller, which is the editor of Lacan work and his nephew, his son-in-law, says it would be very easy to say that sublimation involves repression, but Lacan emphasized that is precisely why the term does not mean. The concept of sublimation indicates that there is no sexual activity, nor is there repression. It's the paradox of satisfaction of the drive without sexual activity and repression. And I go now to the topic today. I'm going to give you just through to your formula, and we're going to talk about the formula and finish and discuss. If it sounds good, please.
Can you repeat the paradox sentence, the paradox of the...
We are talking about sublimation, and it's the paradox or satisfaction of the drive without sexual activity and without repression. Because you know that all the drives, they stop at the repression. So apparently that would be one way, a solution of happiness, that we call it sublimation, if I can prove logically in Lacan theory. Lacan theory is a theory of logic. It's not empiric. The formula goes like this. Lacan said in Seminar 7, sublimation brings an object to the dignity of the thing, with capital T. You're familiar with the thing, the Kantian thing, the impossible to achieve, the Freudian thing, something which is beyond words, beyond names, something that we can never reach. 2 years ago in Austin, I presented sublimation and the body. You can see in YouTube, and I on that lecture I discuss in detail the thing. But today I'm going to suggest another direction. Sublimation is one of the possible destinies of the drive, and according to the definition, is asymptomatic, without repression. So the direction I suggest tonight is to question the primacy of the signifier in the process of sublimation, while understanding that human life, the speaking being, lives in the terrain of the signifier. Do you see the paradox? We have to go to the logic of Heraclitus, not Aristotle. We have to go to the logic of both things opposite being true at the same time. It's quite clear in the clinic that it's a technique based on the subject to signifiers. Lacan described the repression using two methods, the metaphor and the metonymy. Do I pronounce it right? Metonymy? Metonymy. Those are the words indicating the process under which we can change the word for another word, or we can slide in a change. We never reach the meaning. Let me give you an example. A patient comes and says, well, Uncle Billy is the idiot of the family. What does it mean, the idiot? It means his capability to think is not good. It means that he has a family business and is the only one not profiting from it. It's because he ran away. It's because he's whatever. We don't know the word. the meaning will slide over signifier and signifier. But in the Seminary 7, Lacan says that the metonymy is the displacement of the signifier, is the mechanism by excellence of the censorship. And with respect to the metaphor, the condensation is the other method under which repression acts. Today, I'm going to claim to you that the thesis is that to understand sublimation, we should think the concept associated with the distortion of the drive, the Entstellung, the distortion of the drive. And Lacan makes a reference of that as the economy of sublimation. In Lacan terms, quotation, it is in the sliding of the signifier over signified that repression acts via the metaphor and the metonymy. In this way, we can think and highlight the difference between sublimation and the return of the repressed, known as a symptom. Another quote from Lacan. Without taking into account the signifier function, it's impossible to distinguish between the return of the repressed from sublimation as one possible way of satisfaction of the drive. End of quotation. Lacan considers that it's in the opportunity of change of object where the repression situates. Lacan's approach is quite remarkable. His formula, the one I said before, I repeated. Sublimation is what raised an object to the dignity of the thing. Sublimation is what takes an object and raises it to the dignity of the thing. And Lacan's approach is remarkable, his solution. He says, the formula understands that sublimation avoids repression, taking the process of changing itself. Rather than a slide, is the change in itself taken as an object. Lacan says in his, again, quotation, only one thing considers the possibility of satisfaction of the tendency, and is the notion of sublimation. Sublimation is the tendency of changing objects without repression. Is the change in itself, is not the metonym or the metaphor. The Entstellung would be the word distortion.
In that statement, what does object mean?
Object means the pursuit of a longing, or what we can call desire, that is never reached. I want to have a girlfriend, I would like to have a house, and then I have a car, and then the process of desire never ends. And usually, desire is associated with satisfaction. And the opposite of that would be the unlimited enjoyment, which we use the French word jouissance, because it involves two concepts, the pleasure and pain at the same time. The word jouissance involves the concept of pleasure and pain. Sorry?
Can you write the word down?
Certainly. With the mind, you see, the object is always lost. No, but I have another one. Yeah. The word we define pleasure in Lacanian terms is jouissance. Jouissance, even Lacan plays with words many times. You can see here, je, oui, sens. I hear meaning in French. But the word jouissance is the word for pleasure that involves satisfaction and pain. Very applicable to any endeavor, human endeavor. So, what is here at stake is the change itself. by doing that, avoids repression, because one possible destiny of the signifier is the metonymic change of the lost object. Another thing is to take the tendency to change the object as an object. In other words, it's not about taking a signifier as representing some object to another signifier, but taking the signifier itself, elevating it to the dignity of the thing. Is this a way of rejecting the primacy of the signifier? Yes and no, because we experience sublimation as a limit of the signifier, but within the structure of dealing with signifier. When a work of art, a musical work, creates a suspension, a passion in us, delaying the function of the signifier, we are considering that object the thing. Lacan said that music and all art exist, quotation, when the status of the object eludes the capture by the signifier. Remembering court love, the court love, Lacan refers that as one example of sublimation. The woman, those poems, incredible, so beautiful. The guy never reached the woman. The woman in the poem is so sublimated, is so elevated that he never touched it. The object becomes impossible. There is an Argentinian French psychoanalyst, Juan David Nacio, you can refer. He wrote a book on art, the object of an art. And he considers that the work of art has two major effects on the listener. It hypnotizes him or her and recreates the same state of passion that the artist felt. I disagree with both accounts, as I think that music or art awakens us, not hypnotizes us, awakens us to a different subjective mode of living, momentarily. It's not the daily life state. That's the first one. And regarding to the second, I disagree. We can feel the same passion of the artist, because an individual has this structure that is absolutely different from individual to individual, from subject to subject. But I would say that music transmits a signifier without signifying, and does not require time to translate its meaning. This point is the fundamental difference between a word and a music note. I repeat, music transmits a signifier without signifying, and does not require time to translate. The impact, it's there in your chest, or you move because of rhythm, or start crying because it's sad, or jumping because it's happy. The impact of music is related to sublimation, although sublimation does not entirely explain our relationship with the object music. Feeling like going to another world is related to the process of sublimation. To sublimate is not the metonymic change from object to object, represented by a signifier to another signifier, but an object raised to the status of the thing. I apologize for saying that 10 times. The thing found in a phrase, a melody, musical structure, a gesture, a dance movement, a paint, is elevated to the thing. Could making music be the equivalent of sexual pleasure? I don't know. I guess for some. Argentinian writer Cortázar said that opening a book for him was like opening a box of chocolates or getting in bed with a much desired woman. And Leonard Bernstein used to say that he had orgasm while conducting. And one of the reasons I came here was to study with one Rostropovich student that was in cello. That's my legacy. And my teacher used to say that listening to this pianist, Pletniev, made him go to a state similar to orgasm. I don't know. So, Lacan defined art as the development around the void, because the subject, by being, it has a hole in itself, which is a void. Thinking about sublimation has many implications. To provide the object with the dignity of the thing is not something that can be operated by the ego. It's not an operation that involves work, effort, something conscious, but a condition of subjective process, which goes simultaneously with a certain subjective position, which in the case of music, I name it the musicant subject. Thank you. That's it.
Open for questions?
Please, this talk.
All right, so this is what I'm taking away from what I heard. That when we speak language, there's two things happening at the same time. There are words that are connected in our minds to objects in the world, to things, to concepts. But at the same time that we're communicating, there's this sublimation process going on in our subconscious, parallel. So when a word is spoken, there's a signified, and then there's also this experience from the sound and a meaning that we are experiencing when we hear the word that goes along with the connection that's signified. The music or art is the sublimation process that goes in our subconscious without the word being the vehicle for transmitting. So we take the words away and really the signified away, and there's just this experience that we would be having if words were communicated, but the words aren't there, which sort of tells, I can see like telling a story without the story, but we're experiencing what we would experience as we listen to the story. Does that track it all with what you're trying to say?
Okay, the account that you give makes sense. Just I only add that it always involves two processes. When I talk about signifiers, it's always an unconscious process. It's a process of the unconscious. Now, we have a barrier, wall on language that creates misunderstanding that is inherent to language. Now, when a moment, as you described, an object, could be music, could be other thing, create an impasse, captures in a way that the signifier stops for a moment, and we think that we take the tendency of the object to change, and we said, this is it, I got it, this is sublime, this is it. This is the moment we call sublimation, but I didn't read this to you. I should say that sublimation is a supposed encounter with the thing. The thing, of course, is a veiled one. We do not actually reach the thing. We only endow it with the dignity of the thing. That explains Lacan approach. We never reach the thing, it's impossible. But we endow that object with that dignity, the status of the thing.
Like an idealization, but not so much conceptual, but just an experience of idealization.
Idealization would be in terms of the imaginary, in Lacan's terms. The sublimation is a process that involves the three registers, because its idealization can remain on the imaginary level. And sublimation is a process that hit on the imaginary level, on the symbolic level, and particularly on the real. If the real is defined as the impossible, as anguish, then the musical impact also is another version of a real. And that would be the structure under which we think the notion of sublimation, always with a reference to the three registers.
Is it possible to give examples of this, or would that help flesh out what you're discussing at all? For
Examples
example,
would be good. So if you could explain, for example, an experience of
For example, let's say I play for you Bach. It's one work of art. The sounds that Bach conveyed to compose, he imagined, his conception is the imaginary. He concepts some structure and says, okay, I'm going to start writing. When he says, I'm going to start writing, the processes are not chronological, are logical processes. They occur simultaneously. The process of writing involves our agreement. We are going to write music. I can see the music score. We have to agree. E is E, A is A. Language is there. But then, the impact of music on us, we don't have word for it. So that will be the dimension of the real. In one work, you have the three aspects simultaneously going on when that impact occurs. And that impact, of course, occurs in other areas of human endeavors. It could be in science. It could be in a collection of matchboxes. For a poet that Lacan described in Seminary 7 in France, there was a poet collecting in the Pétante period. It was war, and he collected box matches. And for him, that collection was
like the experience of eureka, when an idea comes together in someone's mind, they see a connection, that it's an experience of it coming together, an emotional reaction.
Eureka is more a revelation. It's when something that is a concept acquires a status of reality, saying, I got it. Newton apple that apparently never happened, the apple, I got it. But this sublimation is different because it has one side of it that is absolutely without words. We cannot describe it. It has a side of it that we call the real, to understand logically the possibility of accessing those things that cannot be accessed through language. Lacan always refers to a logic system to understand things. So, to name something real is to create the register under which we can discuss theoretically those things for which we do not have words.
Marcelo, we can almost say that the real involves the body. That could be a difference between thinking about a symbolic connection of language and the real that involves like the anguish involves the body. There's no word, and there's the body that is affected by that.
The body is affected, but anguish is real. We can call anguish the effects is on the body, but the body usually is a source of fallacy, lies, in the sense of, for example, there is not enough food, not enough quantity nor quality to satisfy the oral drive. The drive is satisfied by signifiers, according to Lacan theory. So the body is not a place that we can trust, because logically you can tell a person, you eat three whole pies, two chickens, how can you say you are hungry? So if we go by the body, that's what Lacan defines these registers, to establish a difference. The body is a tricky way to under this conception, in this framework.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a good way to break this down would be that music and art are really tangible, right? It gives us something really tangible that makes us feel like 100 different emotions. And so it's something you can discuss about because it's something that's tangible, like music, but just to sit there and describe music is totally different. But you can hear it, and you can all hear it the same, but your process is totally your experience. And to describe that is your consciousness, but not necessarily something you can verbalize. Does that make? Maybe. Right? It's all just your, like, there's some science
There is a lot of things to say about it. When you say tangible, you refer to an object that is possible to touch. And by definition, in Lacan terms, the object, you can never reach it. It's unconscious. And it, in fact, is traumatic. It's a traumatic truth that we don't want to know. So, music represents an opportunity to have an object that has those connections with the three registers and give us the sort of idea that we reach the thing. But the mental processes that you refer, Lacan has a huge struggle with the idea that there is an ego that can synthesize the processes, because the ego is inherently alienated in this theory. In fact, we don't know what we say, we don't know what we do, why we do it. So there is more emphasized the ignorance rather than the certainty of defining a process. That would be sort of a different, like two discourses talking to each other: neuroscience or ego psychology and Lacanian clinic. Sir.
A couple of questions. So you said, see if I understand, that Lacan reverses the idea of signifier pointing to signified, and he says signified, in fact, is pointing towards signifier. Is another way of saying that is that the what we call the signified, that their desire in the signified or the signifier, they work hand in hand?
Good one. So, I'll try to my best, to the best of my abilities. So, let's review. Lacan took Saussure's Ferdinand de Saussure linguistics, which is very, very tricky, because Lacan usually says, of course, what Saussure meant, and Saussure never wrote it. Lacan implied it. Lacan in his clinic implies like this: for Saussure, the signifier was the prime thing. The signifier. And chair as a sound signified this. Lacan realized that in clinic, the signified takes primacy over the signified, because what remains unconscious is the signifier. I repeat, what makes the subject divide something that he doesn't know or she doesn't know, and I will say the subject, beyond is biological sex. It's captured by the relationship with language, under which the signifier becomes repressed, something that we'll never find. And the only thing that goes is a process of going either through metaphor or metonymy, a process in which you slide over signifiers. It's the idea, you mentioned the word desire. For Lacan, desire is the side of the other. When we are born, we reach a situation in which we are in a linguistic scenario. We already have somebody which has words for us. She will be a wonderful doctor, he will be wonderful. We are inside a scenario that is linguistics by essence. So the subject is not an organic body. It's already pierced by the signifier. And this process is an unconscious. The signifier becomes repressed, and we go through life. And that's why Lacan, I don't want to complicate things too much. Lacan creates a concept that the desire is not, I want that. It's rather, I have a structure of emptiness in me that makes me desire. It's previous to the object. So that's why he creates the object A as a logical category, meaning that desire is not a wanting, it's not a want, but rather a lack. The structure of desire is preceded by the state of lack. The illusion of an object that is lost forever.
So he's saying then that when he says the signified is primary, what he's really saying is that the unconscious aspect of the signified is primary, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now here's another question. You said that the second piece of music you said was by Villa-Lobos?
No, sir. Golovin. Golovin is a Russian composer. 1979, he wrote this elegy.
Did you say that there was, did you make the comment, I couldn't understand you, but there was a note that the music kept approaching and then falling away from, and approaching and falling away from, is that what you said?
What I said that it was almost an analogy, a metaphor of the neurotic structure for Lacan. It's that when you have a desire, you try to reach it. I want that is that note, and I don't care about anything about that note. So when I get the note, I start going and then going down is a state of sadness, typical of what in a case of neurosis we see that when the neurotic subject is close to the object that is desired, usually gets down, doesn't want to take it, because he wants to keep the structure of desire, of keeping desiring things.
Okay. So here's my imagination about that. That in the music itself has a desire, okay? And let's say that the desire is for the tonic chord, okay? And you keep trying to get to the tonic chord, but then you pull away from it, or in Bach, with Bach you have a counter movement, that you're going towards something, but at the same time there's something pulling you away. So that within the music itself, there's this dynamic of the desiring and the lack and the non obtaining of the desire. Is that fair to say?
I can live with that. I can agree with that. I mean, you are defining music for more than 2,000 years. The tonal music is what you just defined. Tonal music is around a center, the tonalic center, and we go around, avoid it, and then we go to another center, and then we come back. And but this has to do with a sort of agreement, symbolic agreement. That doesn't explain why music, following those rules, some of those music hit us in the chest, and some others don't. So, while I agree with that, I would say that it doesn't explain the reasons that makes Mozart consume his life a priori, not before getting into the game of writing these logic games of notes reaching a point, but an undeniable, unconscious desire of keeping doing it as a previous structure, as a life that is satisfied only by creation.
Okay, well, see, what I'm trying to do is to push that farther and say that the music itself, let's forget about Mozart, let's forget about Bach, let's say that the music has them. The music is the subject. Within the music, then, there is this dynamic going on of desiring and missing, and desiring and missing. Within the music itself, forget about human beings, that the music itself has that dynamic in it.
The problem with that, the only problem with that is, I agree with that, but the thing is, we cannot consider univocal meaning to music. Because if an object will present an univocal meaning and a structure that can represent the same for two different subjects, it would be very foreign to this idea of as we construct reality under Lacanian theory. The music is an object, and I agree with you. It has its own logic, a conglomerate of affects according to Deleuze, for example, or affects that define its form according to Kant. Yeah, sure, but music is always in relationship to somebody who is listening, somebody who is performing, somebody who is singing. So there is a dialectic relationship that while I can agree with you, the structure, and that is the topic for musicology, to define the topic of music in itself. I cannot separate the dialectic fact that music and the subject are intertwined in a way that makes different every performance of the same piece, for example. So.
I have a question that will reflect my ignorance in the way that ignorance would be defined. So how would one, to have a good enough life, if I were in an analysis with a Lacanian, how would I look at that as opposed to from a psychoanalytic perspective of kind of work explain, whatever? What would that look like?
Okay. In Lacan clinic, it's not about the well-being of a patient. In fact, when you talk about the subject is a discourse. And, well, you have a discourse, however. What you bring to a session is a discourse. And Lacanian clinic that does not treat persons. They treat discourses that then have an effect on the person. But what we take into this session is the structure of a discourse of a subject. Now, the well-being of the subject is secondary in Lacanian clinic. The well-being or the adaptation to society, Lacan thinks that the ego society only serves the purpose of capitalistic society. We just want to fit in. You just need a pat on the back saying, you're the best, come on, forget about that anxiety. Come on, let's do repeat. I'm not anxious. Lacan will say that the process is unconscious and the life pulsating deal is revealing our relationship with the desire. So in Lacanian clinic is to confront the subject with the desire and to understand desire as a dialectic relationship with somebody that is not the person who is there. It's subject to another, to other. Desire is the desire of the other. And that has, again, 2 other lectures. Be desired by the other and the desire of the other. So Lacan clinics always emphasize the signifier and try to emphasize which signifier comes into repeating. Where is the jouissance in this person? Where is the structure based on a discourse? And in this way, the ethics of psychoanalysis is an ethic of desire. Because according to Lacan, one of the problems of society today, for example, is that there is a lot of jouissance. We are forced, we have a super ego structure, a command to enjoy. Enjoy. Now, don't stop on the phone, go to cyber sex, don't stop anything, just keep doing, and this creates alienation. Because it breaks the relationship with the structure of desire. So that would be one of the points of Lacan treating depression, anxiety, psychosis. I work mostly on psychosis. Because in psychosis there is a relationship to an endless jouissance. Because the name of the father, and this brings another neighborhood. The name of the father is the metaphor under which we structure our life. When a person lacks that and the access to the mother, it's open, there is no law, the person has hallucinations and has the real coming back to him or her in terms of this suffering of hallucinations. Or another that is bad, paranoia, in common terms. So, the clinic always associates to a discourse, and that discourse affects the person beyond that discourse. And the discourse is not always explicit and clear. If I say, I'm a good musician, who is, for example, let's say, who is the I of the enunciation? Me. If I say, it rained, who is the subject of the enunciation? Still me, but I am not in the enunciate. You see? So I am not in the enunciate. So, Lacanian psychoanalysis treatment is to determine where is the subject of the enunciation in a change of signifiers. In which place can I understand where is this person? In a case of neurosis, it will be a typical way of dealing with that, versus hysteria, where the symptom becomes represented as the enjoyment for insatisfaction. The hysteric woman seducing the father, never having everything, is that the side never completes, and the other has a whole. I am very happy. And in the structure of psychosis, we have the lack of the metaphor of the name of the father. In these logical ways, Lacan approach is each structure, and they are defined usually by a question, by a philosophical question. Who am I? Is what the constant the neurotic ask. What do I do? Why? I'm all the time thinking, do I do this or do I do that? Who I am? The hysterical subject will be somebody who is asking the question, what does it mean being a woman? And etc. and so on. I don't want to complicate. We are far from sublimation. Sublimation is one way to achieve a satisfaction that does not ask for a favor to anybody. It's a way of achieving a small degree of satisfaction in this world without repression. And it's something that can be studied and explored in many human activities. I particularly dedicate myself to particularly in music. Would that answers?
No, that was very helpful. I really don't know a lot. I'm very interested. But it's for me starkly different than anything that I know. I'm very curious about it, so I hope that you'll recommend some other resources. I think I would need a guide. Because I've tried to read Lacan before, and I just don't get very far. But it's very interesting, so that's why I'm here today, and I hope that there are other resources in the area.
At the Main Center, we established these lectures on Lacan, and I'm teaching there weekly. There is a huge difference how Lacan is understood at the Psychoanalytic Center to the way that it's taught in mostly Latin America, France, Slovenia, which is the school that I got, the training that I got. So the lecture we do on Lacan is based on first the sources. We don't have many legitimate sources. English translations, I think, are okay, some others don't. Even the transcriptions of text French by his son-in-law Miller, they have a lot of misconstructions and parts of the seminaries that were not presented. So there are some collections of the seminars by French psychoanalysts that they circulate, and I can give you specific details of a website that is free and you can download, staffaula.com, but the problem with that is that those seminars are in French. But there is a guy in Ireland, I think it's Gallagher. Gallagher has translated all Lacan seminaries. I don't know about how faithful are because I read them either in Spanish or in French. I studied them on those languages because for me they are closer to Lacanian's teaching. So, but you see that this ideology or position of analysis is radically different from any perspective on the autonomy of the ego or any self-help proposition that for the Lacanians seems superficial. The history would be saying that after Freud and Jung, some people, according to some, misinterpret Freud, and they create in the United States with Harman this idea of ego psychology. Lacan doesn't claim to have the truth, not who could have it, but he created a return to Freud that is not a return in the way of coming back. Lacan's teachings are a return in the sense of a tour, like a French tour in bicycle. So it's a tour of Lacan, of Freud, because many of his concepts are revealed in a different way that enrich the clinic, have enriched the clinic and hit on how to alleviate many symptoms in society. Yeah.
Introducing another word that's hard to define, people say that religious experience can be an experience of transcendence. And I don't have religious beliefs, but I have often thought that my response to really great music is also an experience of transcendence. Do you think would that be a sensible analogy?
Lacan used topology, another chapter, to try to understand human structure, because Euclidean geometry doesn't explain this idea that we don't have really if the desire is the desire of the other, there is no me actually, no entity. My constructions are the construction of phrases and words that in relationship with others, parents, and who knows the discourse, how many generations of saying things. So the structure of the subject has an empty hole in the center. So according to Lacan, you have some cases, religion tries to fill the hole, saying, we have no hole, just find God, and he fills the hole, and we are all complete. That's one way to go to fill the hole. And science says, okay, it's a huge hole, but there is a new planet, okay, little less of the hole. There is a new way to achieve understanding of the brain. So neuroscience, we now get the functions of the hypothalamus. So let's take the hole a little bit. One day, believe me, one day there will be no hole. That's what science thinks. And it's alienated to Lacan because disregard the fact that always when we emphasize a point, we are displacing others, like in displacement of signifier, and the equation that the particle, if you measure the movement, you lose the particle mass. Okay, this is science. And then you have art. Art, according to Lacan, is something that elaborates things on the border of the art is on the border of the void. The art allows us to, for a moment, to think there is no hole. Like in the movie, an example of imaginary, for example, love, another topic, love for Lacan is always an acknowledgement of the lack. The imaginary love, the adolescent love, in which Tom Cruise says, "You complete me." Then that's the idea of the half orange, and there is no hole. I just need that girl. I just need to find it somewhere, and then we're complete. This is like an adolescent thought, in the sense that in Lacan we share each other's lack, and when we can find in each other an acknowledgement of the lack and the emptiness of our being, then we are not on the level of the imaginary. We are not comparing ties to pants, or let me see yours, and we are more in the level of the what defines us, which is the level of the symbolic. We are in the discourse of our lives, searching for those signifiers that make us believe we have a purpose, that we have some sense or meaning to what we do, and that what we all do. So the answer to the question is that art sort of circumvents the void that is central, inherent to the subject. And other disciplines, they try to fill the hole. For Lacanianism, of course, Lacanian is would you say, anti-philosophical. He called philosophy like the reign of the imaginary, because it pretends with a discourse that is conscious to give account of things that happen on the order of the unconscious. So it's anti-essence. It would be essence, the essential. So it's something that reveals that we are in the discourse, and our reality is how do we deal with the signifiers. So it's how do we deal with the lack and the whole. It's the position. And that's why one of the outcomes of the therapy is that there is an immanent pain of living. We are, Hegel says, we are sick of death. So Lacan takes that from Hegel because he specialized in Hegel during his youth and takes the term saying that we deal with the emptiness and the presence of death by elaborating signifiers, but not ontological. That was the word I was looking on my mind. He's anti-ontological. This is not an ontological philosophy or position. There is no substance or being. There is an emptiness and a discourse, and we have to deal with that. So,
it strikes me that is, you're comparing it with Freud, but I think that can be compared with Jung as well. Only with Jung, instead of the discourse, his idea is that what is essential is the dialogue. The dialogue is not the dialogue vis-a-vis a lack, but the dialogue is the dialogue within a multiplicity of of forces and figures and imagery that are, for the most part, unconscious. So I think he would also say that that reversal that we had, that the signified that the unconscious is calling for acknowledgement of itself, put it that way. That it's not like that there is a sign that points to something in the unconscious and we can say, oh yes, there's the anima, we've got it. No, that's not it. That the anima is calling for a dialogue that will carry on from what I think Lacan would say, from signifier to signifier, from one figure in the unconscious to another, to another, to another. And the acknowledgement of that dialogue, then, is the goal of the work, that it can never end, that there's always something more to get to what Jung would call wholeness, which can never be reached.
I'm not an expert, but I can sympathize with what you said. I can see the analogy on what you say, and I would agree. And we both, I think, if I understood, I hear you, you said that there is no essence of the unconscious, there is no place for it, which is more or less what I've been trying to convey to you today, that there is no place for the unconscious. It's not a place. It's not a place.
Right, it's not a place. And then I think that's a big mistake that Jungians make, is that they conceive of it as being a place with objects that they can identify and say, yes, now we've got it.
Yeah. For example, for Lacan, the archetype idea, it's a fallacy of the individual, because we construct our phantasm, our original primordial fantasy, on the basis of signifiers, and in our lives, totally different from even our brother or sister, two brothers or sisters have a complete configuration of the world different in terms of how the signifier play on their lives. So yes, there is no place for the unconscious. The only thing you mentioned, the word that I would say to you is you mentioned this word, dialogue. And for Lacan, when the subject talks to, let's say, to his a small other would be our interlocutor, somebody we speak with, right? There is a dimension that we usually, this gets blurred by the dimension of the other. And the big other for Lacan is he defined that as the battery of the signifiers, the place for language, with the place that speaks in us without us knowing. It's what our symptom is. Our symptom is our unconscious talking. And we go to a place where we can find this other who will find the signifiers and give them back to us. And then it's for the patient to decide what to do with the symptom. What is his desire? And understanding the jouissance that is involved in the symptom. And understanding that the symptoms is closely related to an enjoyment of it, jouissance. And I said jouissance because symptoms are very painful for many. So the dialogue is always in a ternary situation. Is the subject divided with another in relationship to the big other, which would be the place, the battery of signifiers, language, the structure under which we are launched from the very moment we are in this world. The structure of language precedes existence. You see, Lacan is very structuralistic in that thinking. Language precedes existence. And dialogue is always understanding this place. That's the reason that in Lacanian treatment, we don't talk to the patient. We are trying to put ourselves in a position of trying to reach and try to understand where the signifiers are relationship and with the big other are. Because if I establish a talk, I'm not saying talk doesn't happen. We talk a lot with it. We talk a lot. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we don't talk in the level of person to person. Oh, you're bad. Look at how your shoes and my shoes. We are listening signifiers, understanding that they are in relationship to a big other, to a structure of language that defines the structure of that subject in front of us. So it doesn't matter if it comes, if it don't come. We always have to deal with the discourse. And all the other things, coming, not coming, complaining, paying, not paying, are the outcomes of dealing with a person. But we are actually treating a subject, a discourse, with the hope that the signifiers will produce an effect on the person.
It seems to me this is a difficult approach, but it doesn't really offer, as some do, it doesn't offer consolation. It doesn't offer a sense that you will somehow reach a whole or total happiness or any of that. The process is going to continue.
There is a phrase by Lacan saying, psychoanalysis does very little for persons. But that very little was a huge difference. Truth, there is no huge promise. However, in Lacanian terms, we understand the subject of general life as a continuous suffering without even realizing it. So, just to come in terms with that suffering and taking a position with it is already a huge subjective change. And the person can move to a degree, a certain degree within his history, her history, to a certain degree they can move the axis of how the signifiers play a role in their lives. But if they can move a little, the changes are significant. And you can see the result.
I think I'm a scientist, 100%. So this subject for me is like, it's hard to understand. But based on what you just said is, why dig into this hole that we all have and that we have to live with when science is there, religion is there, to just go through life very happy. There's no need to dig into this unsatisfying hole. That's just me being a scientist. I mean, if you're depressed, go take a pill and be happy and keep going. Don't dig into something that you would never reach. You know, there's no, like you say, you would never fulfill that hole. So, I mean, that's just being a scientist.
Okay, the relationship between psychoanalysis and science is a fascinating one. It is a dialogue and it can be enriching. For some time it was a hard encounter, but it can be an enriching one. I am convinced that with science we can create a dialogue of things that are relevant for both. But science has to understand the fact that it's not about the whole, which is structural. There is a lot of symptoms that has to do with our dealing with language as a structure, which is what, in general, a doctor, medical doctor, don't have the training, neither the knowledge to do, because they don't have the tools to deal with the big other, with the discourse. They just deal with the symptom. Like you said, where does it hurt? Take a pill. Just take it. Where you have a bump, put just a band-aid and just keep going and enjoy life, do your best. The thing is that many people suffer to a degree in which the symptoms is of such presence that requires the need for the symbolic order to produce a subjective change. And those persons, they find a treatment that affects their lives through the interaction with this dimension that science ignores, which is the dimension of the big other, the structure of language. For science is already on the jouissance of the desire to know, desire to keep going, desire to fill holes, but they don't ask themselves the cause of their own jouissance. Psychoanalysis is the tool, is actually a symptom of science. It's because of, because before Descartes, we have God. But Descartes created the subject of science, saying, I will create the logic. I think I have to create a certain certainty. I don't know if God is good or bad, but I know I exist. The problem that the I of Descartes is an I in relationship to knowledge. And the Copernican revolution that started with Jung, Freud, and all those guys was the fact that there is a lot of us that we don't know about it and affect us profoundly. So, science followed that one path, the subject of the Descartes, the Cartesian subject. Psychoanalysis is a symptom, it's a derivative discourse to try to understand what is the jouissance. Why a doctor doesn't ask me about my life anymore? He just look at my liver and say, take this, give me an X-ray. And where is the old doctor that tried to, by intuition, to deal with this, saying, come here, what do you feel? How are you doing with your husband? How is doing with... those were the places that usually, according to Foucault, religions used to have with the priest, or the doctors used to have with their patients. And it's a place of emptiness that psychoanalysis takes now an account with Lacanian to deal with the things that science, by all means, I'm really happy we have antibiotics. And if I go to a dentist, believe me, anesthesia, thanks God, science exists. But psychoanalysis is a path, is a way to understand the jouissance that science doesn't ask for. And they deal with the structure of language inherent to the whole structure of thinking. Science don't do that. For example, language, just to be very clear on this. We have language. You have language and you have the language of a dictionary, the academic. What does it mean? What does it mean? A chair. Academy will say, well, we have a definition. Go to and we have a signifier. Then we have the language of Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary is the one saying, well, if you tell your son he's an idiot, he might think he's an idiot. For her, things are like that. Why? Because they're always were. That's how our aunts and their mother explained. That's how life it is. Deal with that. For Lacanian language, language is a word will lead to another signifier. A signifier is a better thing. A signifier because it's not a word. It goes to another signifier. To another. To another. There is no meaning. There is no meaning, only jouissance on the symptom. The person, the maniac depressive that cannot stop talking. I treat a case, but the lady, she cannot stop talking because when she stops talking, anguish will cover her and depress for weeks. No eating, losing weight, attempts of suicide. And the way of a solution to that was become maniac. We talk. So she needs a symbolic stop, saying, I give you a rule. I give you a stop in this level, on the level of this, not on the level. Of course, we need medication for her. Very good that there is some medication to help her on those crises. But the real treatment for Lacan is not alleviate the symptom, it's go to the cause. And this is the cause of human state, but it's not the cause of suffering, the only cause of suffering of the subject. This is a human reality that we have to deal. But Lacan is not based on that whole. Lacan is based on the symptom, on the suffering of persons that come and they don't know why they do that. And we address them in terms of that dimension. And we can have a friendly dialogue in science. If nothing else, it's been a privilege for me to talk with you, to present with you, and do what I love to do, which is music and psychoanalysis.
Thank you.